Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm your host, and I'm excited to bring to you another episode of John Deere Golf Keeper of the Greens. Got a great episode coming up, ladies and gentlemen, so make sure you get back in that chair of yours. Be comfortable, because this one is a great lot of fun. And as you know, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to have John Deere Golf as a partner for this segment of Keeper of the Greens. John Deere Golf will work with you to move your game forward together. And as we know, the game relies on your team's passion and professionalism, which is why you can trust John Deere for a wide range of advanced equipment and dedicated support. Since 1987, ladies and gentlemen, John Deere Golf have built a tradition on trust and excellence on golf courses all over the world. Now, when you work where others play, you need a partner you can trust to keep your course in perfect condition, and John Deere Golf can help with top quality machines, support forward-looking technology, and their ongoing commitment to this incredible game. Make sure you check out deere.com.au so you can find your local John Deere dealer that has everything you need to keep your golf course running like clockwork. Check out deere.com.au to find your local dealer and hit up those reps and ask them about their latest machinery, what you want to look into, and what equipment you need to update to help keep your golf course in pristine condition, ladies and gentlemen. John Deere can help you do that, and make sure you get in touch with them. I'm really proud to say that John Deere Golf are partners of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast to help me bring you Keeper of the Greens. And now, without further ado, this is episode number 116. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going down into regional Victoria, somewhere that I've never really spoken with many people from this part of the world. So it's great to have on John Deere Golf, Keeper of the Greens, and I introduce to you Superintendent Jeff Powell from Ballarat Golf Club in regional Victoria. G'day, Jeff. How are you, mate?
G'day, Steve. How's things?
Mate, going well, thank you. And I really appreciate you taking time to join me on this new John Deere Golf Keeper of the Greens, mate. Thank you so much for joining in. And
no worries. Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's great to have you on. You're a bit of a stalwart of the industry, and we're going to go through your career in Victoria there and where you've been and where you've worked in your long and established career, mate. And we're going to learn a lot about Ballarat, which I'm excited to do because you guys have had a bit of a rebuild in recent times, and I say recent, probably, I'm guessing, mate, of the last sort of 15 or so years, I would imagine.
Correct.
And it's got a pretty good name from what I hear from people who travel around Victoria playing golf. So I'm interested to learn and hoping that you can share some details on the golf course for us and what it's like looking after the golf course down there, mate. And but let's get started with a bit of fun if we can, and it's Steve Super 7. Are you ready to go?
Well, let's go.
A quick fire 7. I say quick fire because I've got to stop doing that because I'm happy for you to elaborate on things as we go through, mate. So number one, sunrise or sunset? What's it like out there in the country of Victoria?
Oh, that's a tough one because we get it pretty good at both ends sometimes. Sunrises are good.
Yep.
Because we're always here early.
Yes.
But you also get some cracking sunsets, when you're coming in on weekends to check the course after comp, and
yep,
you're here at the golden hour. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards both. But sunrises are pretty good too.
Very good, mate. That's cool. We'll take a both answer on this one. That's okay. Number two, mate, and not necessarily, this is a personal viewpoint, not necessarily the club that you're working at, but do you have a preference of dogs or no dogs allowed on the golf course?
I like dogs. Being off a farm, we've always had dogs, but I haven't had any pet dogs while I've been in town here. But I don't mind dogs if they're well behaved and on a leash and controlled.
Yep.
I don't see a problem with that, and they're cleaned up afterwards.
Yeah, cool.
Nothing worse than mowing through a pile of dog doo-doo and going all over.
Yes, that's not fun. Not fun at all. I'll move away.
Yeah, I think the dog. Yeah, I don't mind dogs at all. So
okay, very good, mate. Very good. Number three, stripes or no stripes on fairways? What's your preference here, mate?
No stripes.
No stripes. Very short.
I mean,
and sharp.
some courses, yeah, I agree. They look good, but because we're mainly Santa Ana here, we don't feed it or anything like that to get stripes coloured up. So no stripes, just natural.
Okay, very good. Number 4. This is a new one for everyone listening, and it's painted whole lips or not painted whole lips. Where do you sit on this one, mate?
I hate painted soul.
That's another strong answer. I like this definitive response.
I think they're the biggest waste of time. It's all right for a big tournament, something like that. But they tried to get us to do it here. It lasted 3 weeks because a lot of the golfers are using putters and all that to get their ball out of the cups.
By
the time you get, 50, 60 golfers through, they look pretty crap. So you're better off not painting them. Just,
very good. If
they can't see the hole from the edge of the green, there's a problem.
I love it. That's a very good point as well. very, very, very
I
practical.
tend to be blunt to the point, Steve. It sometimes gets me into trouble too.
Well, this could be a really exciting podcast episode or a really polarising one. Either way, we're going to get people interested in listening, mate. I'm looking forward to it even more now. All right, number 5. We move right along. I think I've got to keep moving here. Number 5, your favourite grass variety, mate. What's something that Jeff Powell likes to play with in terms of turf maintenance?
Look, I love Santa Ana. It can be a beautiful surface. So can bent, of course, but wintertime Santa Ana's not real good here. But look, I love the bent. I like the bent, especially when it's springtime and she's growing and she's cuts nice and
Yep.
It gives a great surface. Yep.
Good stuff. Number 6, your preferred style of golf course. Now, this one's a multiple choice, and I don't know whether you've travelled to them or not, mate. You might have even just happened to see the pictures of them in magazines or books. So here we go. We'll see what your thoughts are on this one. New South Wales Golf Club in Sydney on the eastern suburbs, right over the cliffs of the Pacific Ocean. Royal Adelaide Golf Club in sort of the central parts of Australia in the Adelaide city, the dry capital city that it is, or Joondalup Golf Resort in the western part of Australia over there in Perth, a wild, incredibly unique golf course that is Joondalup. What are your thoughts there? What's your preference?
Well, that's a big choice, isn't it?
It is.
I'd like to see Royal Adelaide because I think some of the holes here were based on Royal Adelaide.
Okay.
With the wispy grass and the mounds and pines and that sort of thing. So, I wouldn't mind having a walk around that and having a look and, just seeing, comparing it, I suppose. But
nice.
But overall, I wouldn't mind. I'd like to see all 3 of them. Really.
And does that mean you've not been to them before?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
no.
There you go. Well, that's a good wish list, mate. To even a Royal Adelaide.
Exactly.
It's a magic golf course, magic one. And you know what's interesting there, mate, of your response, which I'm just going to highlight here, is that lots of people, and I've avoided having a Victorian club in this or a Sandbelt club in this selection because everyone used to fall into that one anyway. Yep. It seems that most people are tending to fall towards Royal Adelaide, and here you are, you haven't been to any of them, and you still fall to Royal Adelaide. So that says a lot about Royal Adelaide, which is good. It's interesting.
Yep.
We move on to the final one, mate. Number 7. Which golf course in Australia, and this is a big one, I know it is, which golf course in Australia would you like to visit tomorrow and why? And this could be for any reason at all, research, you've got a bucket list course, it might be a nostalgic reason, any reason at all, and any golf course in Australia, which one would you like to go to?
Gee whiz, that's a big one too.
It is
big. I wouldn't mind seeing Royal Sydney. I think that's just been redeveloped. Opened.
It literally, the official opening was on last weekend, but it's been closed still for another week because of the rainfall that they just had. So no play still on it, but it is just reopened. Gil Hance design. There you go. That's interesting.
So I wouldn't mind having a look at that because it's a fairly prestigious club and course, and just to see what they've done to it and.
Yeah. Okay. Very good, mate. That's straight off the bat. That's a very good response because I know lots of people are interested in seeing it. I've seen some photos, mate, and it looks unbelievable. So, very good, mate. Fantastic, Jeff. Thank you for that. Great insight into those, and people will compare with their own answers, which is great to hear. Mate, we're going to now move into the history of your own career, hear a little bit about your greenkeeping career, how you got into greenkeeping, a bit of your background there, and sort of your journey, if you like, of your career to get to where you are as superintendent at Ballarat Golf Club. Mate, if you don't mind, can you take us back to the beginning of a young Jeff and how you got into, did you fall into greenkeeping? Was it a choice? How did you do that?
It was actually by accident.
Okay.
So I was born and brought up on a farm, a dairy farm, actually down the other side of Camperdown, which is about 2 hours south of Ballarat. At age 17, we left that farm and bought another farm at Lake Ballarat, which is about an hour west of Ballarat, and that was a sheep and crop farm. So we were there for about 10 years, I suppose, and I'd done my certificate in agriculture and all that sort of stuff. And the father, we went through a bit of a drought, fed the sheep and all that sort of stuff for well over 12 months to try and keep them alive. And come in the autumn, we had a really cold snap, which had actually snowed in Lake Ballarat, which hasn't been done before.
Wow.
And we lost pretty much 90% of the stock.
Oh, true.
So we had to obviously bury all that. And we never really recovered much after that. And the old man said that, that's it, I've had enough. So he decided to sell the farm, so I had to look for another job.
Wow.
So I went while I was on the farm too, I was doing earth moving, operating dozers and belly scrapers for an earth mover, digging dams and doing road construction in part-time. Every time he's short of an operator, he'd give me a call, and that sort of filled in the gaps. So when he decided to sell the farm, I had to look for a job. So I went around, Ararat, Ballarat, put my name down at, they were shires back then, not councils, and earth moving places and everywhere. And there was a guy that gave me a brief interview at the Ballarat Shire. Little did I know that he was on the committee for the Ballarat Golf Club.
Right.
And then 2 days later, I got a phone call from the then manager asking me to come in for an interview if I was interested. And I knew nothing about golf or anything like that. So I went in and I got the job. That was 39, nearly 40 years ago now.
Right. Okay. That's a big change.
It is a big change, yeah. And, it was a change, but it was kind of similar to the farm thing. There was operating machinery, and a lot of the soils and that were, very similar to the way you treat them and all that sort of stuff. It was more finer grass and that sort of stuff.
Okay. Yep.
So, yeah. So, worked there under Superintendent Danny Walsh at the time, and Danny wasn't qualified, but we then carried on for a number of years after that, and then Danny was pushed off onto long service leave, and they told me that I was in charge of the job.
What?
And bit of a learning curve, that one, I can tell you.
Hey, mate, can I ask how old you were when all of this happened?
I was only 22, 23.
Jeez. That's
So, 24 just on, So when he went off on long service leave, and I did what we thought was the right thing to do, maintain the course and put a bit more effort into it, because Danny had a farm out the other side of Ballarat, so he'd give us our jobs and then he'd sneak off in the afternoon. You wouldn't see him until the next morning, you see. So he was on a pretty good wicket. So, and I think the club had sort of realised that he wasn't putting in the effort, so that's why they put him on long service, and they never came near us the whole month and a half. I think he was gone. 2 months. 2 months. He was gone. They never come near us, which was a bit strange. Usually you got the captain telling you how to do your job and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the end, Danny never made it back.
Right.
And I was I was appointed as the course superintendent at the time.
So you've, I'm just trying to get my head around the speed at which everything changed for you, having the family farm obviously sold after an I can't even imagine what that must have been like for not just yourself, but your whole family to go through something as difficult as losing all that stock and then ultimately your livelihoods. I mean, that would have been a really difficult time for everyone in the family, no doubt.
It was, yeah. It was probably bad timing when we bought the farm because the wool industry was, going downhill.
Right.
The prices for wool on that weren't great. And, we were cropping, relying on cropping, and then there was a drought and all that sort of stuff. But
so where's that? Is that the early 90s? What are we, roughly? Is that what we're talking? Or...
No, that was before that because I started the club at 85.
Oh, okay. So we're back in the 80s. Righto. Okay.
Yeah. So, knocked the old man about a bit, but, eventually sold up and, he just worked on other farms as a farmhand for other people. And,
yep.
He was pretty handy with his hands. He could build anything and weld anything and, so he was making stuff on that for people. And so he was good.
And then for yourself to go and change from farming life, which is all you knew. I mean, you knew machinery and doing those sorts of things as well, but then getting into golf and turf, and then before you know it, you've been given the ropes and said, "Here you go, Jeff, you're it."
It was a fairly quick turnover. Like, it's probably, I think it was 94, 95, I think, when all this happened.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, Danny was a man. He was quite proud. He wouldn't tell you, he wouldn't give you advice, or he wouldn't explain things to you. It was all a secret to him. Kept his cards close to his chest. So,
that wasn't uncommon for people of that era, because I've experienced that type of thing as well. With when I started my trade, there were a couple of really older superintendents about the Blue Mountains and Western New South Wales that I knew of, talking to other people in the industry and locals, that they were very much like that. It would keep everything close to their chest. As I don't know why. Maybe that was a thing for that era. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and whether it was a way to keep their job, I'm not really sure. But nice enough bloke. But if you asked him, something about a bag of fertiliser, you wouldn't get an answer.
It's a secret recipe and how it all worked. And...
Yeah, so you sort of sometimes wondered. I wonder if he actually knows what.
But yeah, an interesting, different time, different era, different way of looking after a golf course, and I think that was a more regional or I say regional country way of life of looking after golf courses, maybe, because I do know very much what you mean when you say that. It's interesting.
Yeah. So, and I've always had an eye for detail, so even on the farm. But, so looking after the golf course, you could pick things, and I still do it today. You're walking down the middle of the fairway, and if you see a clump of grass under a tree, you're on the phone to your ground staff saying, this needs to be cut, trimmed,
Yep.
So, and I think that's what, sort of helped me through, because we were getting a lot of good feedback after Danny left, and we tried to improve the old course as much as we could, but we never had much machinery. We never had any renovation equipment or anything like that, so it was virtually just basic maintenance.
Yep. And
so,
can I ask, did you relish in the idea at that time of being thrown the reins? Do you remember how you felt about that? Was it like, Struth, I'm not ready for this now, but I'll take it, or let's have a crack. I want to have a go.
I wanted to have a go, but I was crapping myself at the same time.
Mate, I'm just trying to establish if you're human here, that's all.
Because you think I can do this easy, and then as soon as it's foot on you, you're thinking, crikey, can I do this? But no, it's sort of come naturally. I think the biggest hurdle was the staff management part.
Yep, for sure.
So, and there wasn't many of us. I think there was 5 all up
Okay.
So trying to manage staff because they're all different characters and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah. Yep.
But eventually stumbled my way through it. But I got better at it as the years got by. But yeah, it was good. Once we started getting in the swing of things and trying to plan things out or what we needed, what I wanted to do, and that sort of stuff. But as I said, the feedback came back positive, and yeah, it sort of went on from there. So
very impressive, mate. So you became super at a young age, and then and you've been super since. Is that roughly how it's worked? Have you held that position, or have you gone elsewhere and then come back like some people have?
No, I've always been a one golf course.
So well, that's a short conversation, Jeff. It's been lovely to talk with you, mate.
A lot of people say, have you been here, that long? And a lot of people say, a lot of the members will probably say it's 4 years too long.
So how long? So in total, we're in 2025. In total, how long have you been superintendent?
I can't exactly. I'm pretty sure it was 94, 95.
Right.
I took over. So.
Okay, so that's the best
part.
Of
wages haven't improved much.
So that's the best part of 30 years as super, and you worked there for the years before that, earning your stripes.
Yeah. So it's 40 years.
So 40 years,
in October,
which the only other person that springs to mind of that is Superintendent Idris Evans out at in Perth, over there at the Western Australian Golf Club, who I've not long ago spoken with on the podcast, and he was engaged there for similar like 40 years at the one club. And I just find that hard to get my head around. That's an incredible achievement in itself. Forget what you've been doing now. I mean, just to be engaged and still have the energy to turn up to work every day and keep on keeping on, there's something in that challenge in itself, mate. I've got to be honest, because it's just, maybe it's a different era, different generation. I'm not sure, but that's quite an achievement in itself, mate. It's something that I would say is very impressive and worth being proud of from where I sit.
Yeah, look, I've always loved the job. It's a jack of all trades. I know the politics get a bit. What's the word for it? Get a bit out of control sometimes, but the actual job, there's a lot of satisfaction, when you're preparing for a pro-am or a tournament, and you can be quite proud of looking over the course, when it's Mickey Mouse and that sort of thing, and it's just something that you have a plan to, I always want to plan to get in the old course into the top 100.
Yep.
I didn't achieve that, but we certainly improved it over time. And the old course was very flat. There was no undulations, and the drainage was non-existent. In the wintertime, it was just a bog hole. So, we had a lot of challenges like that. But, even today, I still love the job. Still love the sunrises and sunsets. And,
very good.
Mate,
very good. Well, knowing that that's where you've been from that time, now, let's jump to the golf course, and you've got a lot of, we can talk about the evolution of the golf course along with your career, and seeing as that they now run in parallel from back in the day. Without being rude, I can say that. Mate, so let's get back to a little bit of describing, let's start off with describing the Ballarat golf course and Ballarat itself. So just on my research, and I don't know country Victoria too well, but you're about an hour and a half north or northwestish of Melbourne, and from what I'm looking at, you're around sort of 500 or so metres above sea level. It's like the Central Highlandsy type place in Victoria. You got over 100,000 people that live in the city of Ballarat. That's a pretty sizable place, and is it only the one golf course in town?
No, there's a few around town.
Okay,
we have Midlands. It's more to the sort of northeast of Ballarat.
Okay.
Or north of Ballarat. There's Creswick, which is the RACV course with Creswick just outside of Ballarat. That's about 20 minutes away on the north.
Okay.
We have Bunnyong to the south.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's a few.
and there's another one, Xavier, which is to the east, but it's
Right.
just a little course. It's 2-man job, and
Yep. So
they do pretty good.
there's a few golf offerings in Ballarat there, and like I said, 100,000 people is not small. Like this is a sizable city in regional country Victoria, and
Correct. Yep.
but you guys are extremely old as a golf club. You have been there. It was established in 1895, which makes you one of the oldest golf clubs in Australia.
Yep.
And
I think we've still got some of the original members here too.
Good deflection made on your long career at the club. So I like that. Well done. Well done. So, okay, tell us a little bit about your elevated country. What's the soils like? You talked about that coming from farming life, so you've got an understanding of what you're looking at and how to deal with that, manage a crop, as it were, in the turf grasses in those soils. Tell us a little bit about that. What have you got, or what was the old course? Let's start with what the old course was when you began, and the soils, and then the grass types that were there.
So the soils in the old course were pretty much heavy topsoil / clay. They'd hold a lot of water in the wintertime. Sometimes we couldn't even cut fairways in the winter with ride-on mowers.
Wow.
Because they just bogged down. You'd have to. I don't know if you remember the old Deutsche mowers. Deutsche used to make.
Yeah, I've heard that, because I think we used to have them at Wentworth Falls. We had one, I think, at Wentworth Falls.
Yeah, they had the handlebars that fold over, and you sat on the seat and steered them from one side to the other. What we used to have to do is put them in gear and fold the steering bar out the front, and you just walk in front of it, a bit like coring, but you were cutting fairways, so otherwise it would bog in. So yeah, really, really heavy soils, and no, as I said, no drainage because the course was that flat. There was a lot of open drains where, if you got a bit of flash flooding, heavy rains, it would run towards the open drains, but
and those sorts of drains were often used old school ways of just draining the soil itself in low parts of the course, weren't they? Because if you dig a trench or a ditch, the soil in a flattish type area would just naturally fall. The water would fall out into the drain and just start to run away. That was just an easy way of draining because, the mountains it's not quite as old as Ballarat. So again, that seeing those types of old things that is how that was just done. They just did that.
Yeah, and a lot of these drains were heading towards Lake Wendouree, which is the major lake in Ballarat, and so they'd flow towards that, even though they were hard blocked up and silted up and everything else. But so you couldn't cover them in, otherwise, the water had nowhere else to go. So and grass-wise, the greens were pretty much pure Powell. I have a map here that was 1934.
Oh wow!
All the greens were on exactly the same locations as that map. So they, most of them had 4 inches of thatch. they were very old. I think before I got there was 2 or 3 greens that were rebuilt.
Okay.
To what they call USGA specifications, but they were using 20 mil aggregate instead of the 10.
Yeah, yep.
So there was no irrigation either, so you had to put town sprinklers on.
Wow.
And, of course, golfers would move them all the time, and if you had more than 4 or 5 on, there was no pressure. They had irrigation lines in, which we used to plug the big spud irrigators into at night. So you'd set them up.
Are they like travellers, like they would move along?
Yeah.
Travelators or whatever. I know what you mean, because we had the same.
So you set them up at one end of the course, one end of the fairway, and then, by the next morning they'd be up the other end.
Because you'd have to set. Didn't they have they have the wire on the pulley? Yep. So every time they would just slowly crank and turn the cog, and you'd put the wire in the stake at one end of the fairway, drag it all the way out, and then it would all night it would move, and then by the other you'd get to the end, and you'd be I know exactly what you mean.
We had two diesel pumps. We had 2 dams, one up the front course and one down the back of the course. So you'd fire them up at about 6 o'clock, and they'd absolutely hum, flat out.
You'd probably hear them across town.
Yeah, probably. And they'd go until, probably about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. That's whenever the spud irrigators hit the other end, they'd be timed, so they'd peter out at then. But, look, tough times in them ones, I can tell you.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
So, the fairways were just cool season, bit of a mixture of everything, ryegrass, bent grass,
Yep.
power, all that sort of stuff. Surrounds, mainly power. We did a little bit of reconstruction on tees because some of the tees are very small. So, we rebuilt them and, made them sand capped and that sort of thing. But, so a lot of the course was, still pretty original, that's for sure.
So a reasonably primitive regional golf course, as you probably might expect being out in the country, away from Melbourne and a capital city.
Yeah, I mean, even though it had a pretty good name, they had very little money to play with, and you'd do things on a shoestring budget. And back then, wages. I think when I first started there as a groundsman, my wage was $240 a week. I don't think that's improved much.
Hey, I like to highlight our careers, mate, and we'd like to do it.
Yeah, so and. There'll be a lot of night operations too with the irrigation. Like somebody'd have to be on call to come in the evening and watch these spud irrigators and go around and check them and make sure they were moving and that sort of thing. And
that was just what you did, right? I mean, it wasn't about I correct me if I'm wrong, but like I said, I grew up, I was young, and Wentworth Falls had similar stuff, but you just did what you had to do. These were all the equipment that you had. There were no options.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
This is part of the job.
It's part of the job, yeah. I mean, you'd have a greens mower and the cutting the rough was with a tractor and slasher on the back. You'd be backing in under trees and all that, so you'd be bitten by spiders and all.
And you couldn't get really close, so then someone would have to be whippersnipping the trees.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you couldn't get underneath some of them with the low branches, and you'd have to. Yeah. Did you have a roller on your slasher? Do you remember a rear roller?
The bearings always went on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get back to the shed, maybe hanging out,
Mate, I'm reminiscing. This is unreal. I was like 14 when I remember seeing this stuff.
Yeah, you'd be changing gears in your sleep. You'd be going from first to reverse,
That's gold. So funny.
But, we had a mental hospital on the edge on the north side of the course, fairly big, Arundel. Sorry, not Arundel, Lakeside. And that was interesting too. We used to get a few visitors down from there. There was a couple of guys that
they'd just go walking.
And some of them, you get in your smoko room, they'd be sitting in there reading the paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and some days you have a great conversation with them. Other days you couldn't make 2 cents out of them. Because depends what they were on, but it was always interesting. Even when you're on night shift, you'd have the old Datsun Ute with one headlight and no doors on it, and you'd be checking your irrigation with a torch, and you turn around, the lights would be switched off, and it kind of spook you out a bit. So even cutting greens up there, you'd swing around on the greens mower at 5:30 in the morning, and the light would hit a pine tree, and there'd be a head hanging out the side of it watching you.
Oh, fair thing. That'd scare you.
Yeah, it does a bit. But you got used to it after a while. So, interesting times sometimes. But,
wow. So, as time moves on and the golf course starts to evolve, and we touched on there that the golf course had a rejuvenation. What was the catalyst as things got towards the 90s and into when did that change, the redesign of the golf course? How did that sort of come about? And what time? What year are we talking when these things happened?
I'm not big on dates.
Just roughly.
You can ask my wife that. She reckons I'm hopeless. I think it was about 2006, somewhere around that.
Okay, so early 2000s. Yep.
Yeah. So a local developer approached the club as a land swap deal. So they would build us a new golf course, and they would take over the land to build houses on it,
Right.
on the original course.
Okay.
So that's, talks happened on that. They needed, if they were going to build on the old course and a stayed on the old course, they needed the golf course in between the residential and the industrial as a buffer. That was how it came about. So they, there was talks on that, and they ended up having a meeting over, members meeting. It was voted through. I think there was about 10 people objected to it. Not sure why, when you were going to get a brand new golf course, but and it sort of developed from there with the planning and everything else. Once it was, passed by members.
So the land that the course is now on today, how far away is that from where it used to be?
It's virtually over the fence on the north side.
Oh, okay. So it's like neighbouring.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
We used to stand at the fence and watch them shape things and that sort of stuff. So,
right. Okay.
So
you've just moved to the south?
The north.
Oh, the north. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah. So there was also a condition that the club always had 18 greens in play at the one time.
Okay.
So as they were building part of the new course, and taking away some of the old course, like where the clubhouse is now, which was the 13th, 14th area, they'd come in, they'd play if the old course in the couple of holes in the new course as it was getting developed, and then
it's sort of a transition.
Yeah, yep. So that was one of the conditions that they had to comply to. So. Which was tricky.
So it was the new course. Tell us a bit about the design. So tell us who was involved design-wise the new course.
So it was a Thomson Perrett.
Thomson Perrett
design.
Okay.
Yep. It was old farmland.
Right.
So it was just flat paddocks. It sort of rises from the clubhouse, which is on the west end of the course. It'll rise up slightly to the east, but majority of the paddocks were all flat. So it was just a farmland.
Yep.
Farmland.
Just a grazing property.
Yeah. Yep. So the design, we went through, I think, 3 or 4 designers to pick through. There was I think Ted is a Parslow.
Oh yeah, yep.
Murray Downs.
Yep.
One of the board members or committee members, as they call them then, wanted a Murray Downs down here.
Okay.
And I sort of piped up and said, "Why would you do that?" And he goes, "Oh, Murray Downs is very popular, so it would be very popular here." And I said, "It wouldn't be popular here because nobody wants to play in the wintertime here. They'd rather go to Murray Downs."
Okay, that's interesting. Yep.
So he must have had a thought about that, So, so we went through interviews with 3 or 4 designers. One designer just wanted to put a tee up one end and a green down the other and just leave it flat.
Okay.
We didn't like that design.
Yep.
Obviously, because that's where we've come from virtually.
Yep.
Thomson Perrett, they put their case forward, and there was another designer which I can't think who it was now, but anyway, we didn't agree
get the nod either.
No, and Ted Parslow, he'd been out of the country for a good while, so when we interviewed him, he didn't know what the most popular grasses were or anything like that. And the fact he works on his own, that there was a concern if he happened to get hit by a bus, nobody would be there to take over. So
yep.
So it's pretty easy that Thomson Perrett would be the main contributors, for their
and they've got a wonderful name just the same. Certainly in that era, the early 2000s.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they've done lots of work. Lots of work in Melbourne as well.
Yeah, that's right, and not far away, and not far to travel.
Yep.
Things, Once the designers were picked, it was away we go. And I think the biggest hurdle of all was the hydrology. The water, where it was going to go and
Okay.
where it was going to be piped to, because the council wanted some of the water to go to Lake Wendouree.
Right.
Because of the drought the previous years, where the lake actually dried up. They didn't want it to dry up anymore. So they wanted to channel as much water as possible to Lake Wendouree. And that was a bit of a fight, because, we needed water.
I was going to say
they want water. So
was that a contentious issue? I suppose I say arguing. I don't really mean it as a combative way, but in terms of making sure you guys had water security for what you were about to spend a lot of money on.
Exactly.
Yeah, and what they obviously needed for environmental flows, and I imagine from the scheme of the size of the property relative to the size of that end of Ballarat, it's quite small. But how much flow comes off there? The environmental scientists work their numbers and all that sort of stuff. The engineers.
Yeah, and it's we want to be sustainable for the next 100 years. So the council weren't really demanding. They just wanted a portion of the water.
Yep.
And eventually it come to, agreed that, we'd get this much and they'd get that much, And it wasn't hard, because really there was a slope in the land, where the water would fall all the way to the clubhouse side. And then the rest of the water would flow to the Wendouree side, Lake Wendouree.
Okay. Yeah, righto. Yep.
So it was just, common sense, I suppose. In the end, it was just a matter of how it was getting there. So,
yep.
And we get a lot of water as well off Lake Gardens, which is an estate up near the Forth area there. It comes down through a series of ponds and creeks, and then ends up in the corner of the property where we pump it up into the dams. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the biggest hurdle. I think the water. Once all that was sorted out, it was pretty much off we went after that.
Yeah, right. That's good. Do you have? I'll jump into water question. Do you have enough water now? What's your water capacity? Can I ask?
Yeah, well, we got 2 dams which hold a combined 50 megalitres.
Okay, nice.
One's above ground dam, the other one's in ground. The dam, which is near our maintenance shed here, they started digging it, and there's a lot of rock under Ballarat.
Okay.
Big bluestone boulders. So once you get down to about a metre, you're going to be in trouble.
Right. Wow.
And they're not like small rocks. They're huge.
Right.
Sometimes.
Okay.
So they spent 6 weeks drilling, so they could blow it.
Wow.
And it was just like a big rock quarry, and it was just it's a luck thing, You could dig a hole and you could have like 20 feet of clay, and not hit a thing.
Right.
And other times, you'll hit all this rock. So the main dam, they decided they'd go up instead of down. So they built that upwards. So, and that at that dam we also have a bore, where you have a license for 144 meg.
Right.
So the water's not great quality, but it's water.
Yep.
So
beggars can't be choosers in certain times. Exactly. Against Mother Nature. That's one thing we've all learned.
Especially this year, she's had a fair flogging.
Well, isn't that interesting? I know we're fast forwarding a little bit, but yeah, I've heard that from a number of people in the southern states, across the length and breadth of Australia in the southern states. Whereas from Sydney north, or even a little bit further south, but all the way up, like the water has just been an incredible year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so dry down here this year, so
unreal.
But so we got all the water issues dealt with, and the developer they convinced the Ballarat council to dig the dams and place the dirt around so they didn't have to double handle it.
Yep.
Because we needed the water for growing. And they went a little bit beyond that. They had half the course shaped, and there was a front page picture in the Courier local newspaper of the new Ballarat Golf Club course redevelopment, and it was an aerial shot. Well, by 9 o'clock the next morning, there was that many cancel cars down here and seats walking around because they'd never had the permits cleared, you see.
Oh, really? Wow.
They agreed to let them dig the dam, but they went a little bit beyond that. But anyway, that was just a small hurdle.
Sometimes developers, and people wonder why developers have a tough time, because sometimes they do not listen, or they don't follow instruction, and they take a little bit of liberty, and it's more about, shoot first and ask questions later.
Can't hold back progress.
Yeah. For better or worse, I am laughing about it because it's they don't help themselves sometimes, and this is why we have more and more red tape, right?
Yeah. But anyway, that's it all got over that, and so they started construction, and these guys were a road construction mob. So the 13th fairway, when they finished that, it looked like a highway. And there's an airport not far from here, and I was a bit worried. You could see these planes kind of lining up, and I'm thinking,
oh, no.
Surely not like that. But anyway. So, Thomson Perrett convinced them to bring some shapers in, and, they'll show them, how it's done.
How to do it properly.
Yeah, and, there was two big articulated scoops, and I think the names were Spook and Spider operating it. Father and son thing, and they started at one end and away they went. And it was
wow.
Just the transformation was just unbelievable,
Right.
They'd be digging bunkers, and, so the course is very undulating. The fairways are very undulating. So,
and that's a feature of a Thomson Perrett, Thomson Woolridge Perrett, because it's often the moundings, and I know Camden Lakeside here in Sydney, which is one that's very well known. There's lots of mounding all over the place, and it's not uncommon that we see that. Even I think Capital Golf Club in Melbourne's got a little bit of those features around the sides of the fairways, and in photos that I've seen, it's a very Thomson Perrett style.
Yes, very big bunkers, very high bunkers, bunker faces. Yeah, how
long to complete construction? Do you remember? Was it a couple of years by the time everything was done and dusted?
Oh, wasn't that long, because I remember Ross making the comment that it was the quickest they've ever built a golf course.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go.
So a lot of earthworks, a lot of drainage works, which, we'll work on that later on. But they sand capped the whole place. The fairways, etc.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think, from memory, they turned over 150,000 cubic metres of soil to shape the course.
Yep.
There was 37,000 cubic metres of sand brought in.
Wow.
So there was the greens was USGA spec. Tees were sand capped. The fairways were all sand capped.
Right.
It was pretty good.
That's impressive.
Sort of, it was. So, and that all come from, Stawell. It wasn't local. It was another, hour and a half away. So, to bring all that in. So, and they got all that down. They hydroseeded the whole place, just blanket. They originally put in Sanarana in the fairways.
Yep.
Because they were concerned that during the winter, with the heavy rains and that, it would wash a lot of the sand away. So they sowed down fine fescue in the fairways to try and hold it.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in springtime, that fine fescue went absolutely nuts, and it grew very well. Very well. And then come December, they tried to drill in the Sanarana.
Yep. And
what was happening was the fescue was getting clogged up in the tines of the Sprigger. So it was ripping it out in big chunks, and it was a bit of a nightmare there. But and then so they got all the fairways done with Sanarana, and there was concerns that nothing was coming up, and they ended up getting Graham Grant in down the track.
Yep.
And we had to spray out all the fairways.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and there was a lot of cooch that wasn't taken at all. You'd have one or two runs, and then there was nothing for the rest of the fairway. So
Was there an explanation for why the Santa Ana wasn't taking? There was just the fescue was too dense, or
yeah, I think the fescue was too dense, and they were pushing it pretty hard with fertiliser, because the deal was that soon it was playable, it was changed over, handed over. So
right.
Yeah, so we spent probably 6 months plugging fairways.
Wow.
So, to try and get coverage. Graham Grant, I employed Graham Grant to come up and sort of oversee it. This was after the handover. But, yeah, it was a nightmare. A lot of work. A lot of work. And luckily, in the old course, we had a couple of fairways at Santa Ana. So we'd go out there and strip that off and with the old sod cutter and plant it down, and that got too monotonous. So I ended up making a big corer out of our vertidrone. So this is where the farm stuff comes into it.
Yeah, the skill set, right, of being able to work stuff out and make do with.
That's right. So you got two big tines when you put the big 3/4 tines in. A 3-inch gal pipe would actually fit nicely in between them. So I cut gal pipe about 2-3 inches long and welded them in between those tines. And I only done the middle ones because you couldn't do the whole lot, otherwise you'd destroy the machine. And so we went in the old course, and it would plug out all the Santa Ana, and the boys would just follow on, throw them in the workman, and then we come into the new course and plug all the bare patches, and we'd do a hectare in a day.
Yeah, so right.
So it worked really well, but
unreal. But a lot of headaches in trying to work out the problem and overcome the issue at hand, really.
And then it created another issue, because when we sprayed out the fine fescue, it then left that really dense dead matter.
The mat on top.
On the sand, so therefore the drainage was restricted. So
yeah, okay. Wow.
So that was another issue we had to deal with.
All these are kind of unexpected problems from trying to stop the sand initially blowing away, is what you were sort of saying.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you, looking back, and how we now love the concept of having fescue on fairways, would that even work there? Does it just get too hot in summer?
Oh, it gets too hot. I mean, we got fine fescue in our roughs, and it just burns off. Golfers aren't supposed to have carts in the rough, but they're in the rough, and you'll just see the burn marks in the hot days. So
yeah, right. Okay.
And they actually put fine fescue in the surrounds.
Right.
And when they said that, the course is now playable, we've got to move on. Obviously, there was a lot of golfers because, it's a new toy. Everybody wants to play with it. And I actually begged them at the time to leave it for 6 months, to get through the winter time and see how it performs. But because we had so much traffic and the grass was new, we lost a lot of surrounds that had to be ripped up and relaid. So that was another problem we had, and we obviously we were lucky then because you can get bed grass sods. Now it's pretty hard to get bed grass sods.
Yeah.
So we had to relay a lot of areas because of the traffic just knocked it out completely.
Wow. So. There you go. And obviously Santa Ana, I'm a huge fan of, but we know that in terms of summer stress tolerance and dealing with drier times and all those sorts of different summer stresses, that I know it switches off in winter, but from an environmental perspective and from a water management perspective, it's obviously a much better choice for the broader part of the golf course, really, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You couldn't do without it, really.
You couldn't do without it, yeah. I mean, like you said, in the winter time, it's not pretty. But in the summertime, if we were on fescue or bent, we wouldn't have the water, and the bore would probably kill it anyway. The salts in the bore would probably kill most of the grass.
Okay.
It was interesting because we had a couple of members campaigning last year to rip all the Santa Ana out in in the fairways and
Really?
replant it with bent grass. Yeah.
In modern times?
Yeah, it's
Oh, my Lord. They obviously haven't heard me talk about Santa Ana Cooch before. I have to come down and just educate them.
that's another story in itself, mate. But yeah, that's
Oh, wow. That's
so
wow.
there
I
was
mean,
a lot.
yeah, Royal Canberra
There's a
is
lot
just
of
taking out the
campaigning.
bent.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and we engaged with Bruce McPhee from ASMO to come up.
Yes.
And he did a whole review of the course and our maintenance practices. The club do that pretty much every 12 months, you know.
Yep.
I think please the members that we're doing the right thing. But
well, you've been there for a few years, mate. I'd like to think you got some idea of what you're doing.
Well, apparently not. But
we might leave that one alone because that could get ugly.
Leave that one alone. But yeah, so yeah, it was
okay. Interesting, challenging. And this is club life,
tough.
right? I've talked about this before with many people, and lots of people we discuss in our industry about these things. And this is club life. Memberships come and go, and individuals that are more boisterous than others, or louder, if you like, and more vocal. They come up with different ideas of what they think is right or wrong, or better or worse. And these are the discussions. Sometimes heated discussions, sometimes frustrating conversations that you've been there for as long as you have, and you've come across these conversations numerous times, no doubt, and they keep coming.
Oh yeah, it's like surfing, mate. You're just waiting for the next wave to come. You know, it'll settle down for 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden something else will pop up.
But this is club life. There's lots of personalities, and this
right.
is, you know, I know I can talk about it because I'm not in that working environment, mate. So I won't let you say it. But these are the things that become sometimes very, very frustrating and almost put you to the wall sometimes. You get
absolutely.
You get people that have bees in their bonnets. And I've had stories, and I'm sure you've spoken with other people as well, mate, where and I want to try and help memberships and board members understand that there's better ways to go about these conversations rather than having a bee in your bonnet and targeting your superintendent or your head greenkeeper or whoever it is and just thinking that you've got to get them to change their ways or whatever. It's about coming at the conversation in a way that you can have a constructive discussion about it and not a heated discussion, because that happens to a lot of people. Members and board members are very emotional because of their emotional attachment to their golf course. And they come at it from this emotive angle, and sometimes that puts up a very, very big front, and it becomes very argumentative from the get-go, and that's very challenging for lots of people that work on course.
It is frustrating, and it's it gets personal after a while too, because if you keep blocking them. Like every time we have a Greens meeting, we sit in the boardroom, and up on the wall is good old Peter Thomson, and it's like he's looking at you, and you got these guys that want to change things and all that. And in a way, you've got to protect the course as it was supposed to be built, and played, not having these guys come in and change things because of their own personal views,
Yeah.
We try and work on the science and the facts, not the egos and everything else. So.
Yeah, and it's hard for people to get away from that. I understand that, and that's not what they do every day for a living. Whereas for people in your situation as a superintendent, for golf course architects, and these are the people, you guys are, and guys and girls are the people who are here to retain the integrity of the living space and maintain what it is and its essence of what it's meant to be. And it's not an easy job every day of the week dealing with Mother Nature, let alone those other challenges that come from people in the clubs and from the membership. But I'm just trying to sort of get across to those people listening that are golfers, that are members, that are board members, is that the constructive criticism, the constructive conversation and healthy conversation is good to have, but it's about maintaining that control so that your emotions don't get the better of those discussions. Yeah,
exactly. It's it's a tough gig sometimes, but we get there eventually.
We do. Hey, and you're still going, mate, which is great to see.
Still going,
which is very good.
Anyway.
So Santa Ana Cooch we still have on course. at your fairways. You got through that difficult time. Your greens are bent grass greens. Were they always bent grass from the get-go, the grass that you have now, or was there a change in any of that?
Initially, they were sown down with G2.
Okay.
So in the old course, we built two greens to trial some bent grasses before, just before the reconstruction.
Yep.
And we put in A1 G2. G2 was the flavour at that time.
Yep.
And we were trying a new one, which was 007 and Tyee.
Okay.
So I think they went for 18 months. And the members always commented about the 007. The Tyee was a bit more like pasture bent, very broad leaf.
Okay.
That sort of thing. So it was different, which, it was really different. The A1, very thatchy, like every time you cut it, even though it was half a green, you'd still get a catcherful.
Yeah.
And the G2, I didn't like it much because every time it got cold, it stopped growing.
Right. And you do get cold.
Yeah, we get cold. When you get a frost, or even when it got down to 10 degrees, it'd turn a bit yellowy.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So the time come to pick the grass, and we did all the trials, root depth, the colour, density, clippings, all that sort of stuff. And the issue was with me with G2 was there was no G2 inside central Victoria. It was all down along the peninsula and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the coast.
Where they don't get frost.
You don't get frost. So, they got a high humidity through the winter months that keeps the frosts at bay and all that sort of stuff. Yep.
So anyway, on the day, they had a big powwow over it, walked over and all that, and Ross says, G2, that's what we've used in the past. We've had success with it, and that's what we'll use. And I disagreed with him for those reasons that winter time there seems to be an issue with it. But I was overruled by the subcommittee that was formed for the construction, and said, well, he is the expert, so that's what we're going to go with. So they sowed it down in the new greens. And then in the wintertime, it did exactly that. As soon as it got cold, it stopped growing. And it didn't matter how much you fed it. It just wouldn't green up. It wouldn't, it just sat there. And then you get disease in it, and they would scar it for, until November before it actually grew out.
Yeah, because you get warm enough night temperatures to keep that growth going.
Yeah.
Instead of just a day spurt, you want it continuously growing for repair. And you just weren't getting it with that, obviously, your situation.
Yeah. So after a year or two, we end up oversowing with 007. And,
right.
I do that every 2-3 years. I give them a bit of new, variety, new grass.
Yep.
Seed on it, so just to densen them up.
And you still do that?
I still do that, yeah.
Right, okay.
Just to get that density, because Powell down here is probably where it originated from. It just loves, the Powell loves the climate here.
Yep.
And when we had our greens, I don't know, it was about 5-6 years afterwards, they were pretty much 90%, 95% bent grass.
Yep.
There's a bit of power creeping in here and there, but and then I had this board member who thought he was a turf guru, and he convinced the board to go 50-50 power bent, and that just floored me. Why would you do that when you've got pure? Because the years before that, we had to keep it 100% pure.
Yep.
And now he wants power in it, so they adopted that policy.
Okay.
And I was told at the time that if I ever got caught treating it, I wouldn't have a job, because that's now club policy to have power.
Okay.
So the power eventually just went rife, it took over.
I would imagine just you describing the environment there and the challenges of the G2 not growing through your winter months. I'm surprised you didn't have more power to be very quickly through the greens. You obviously managed that quite well, even though the bent wasn't growing actively to keep it out with its own density. Yeah,
that's right. We were doing our best to keep it out. And but anyway, I decided to go to power, and then the power took over. And
yep.
And now it's more or less, you just do whatever your job is to do it. So we're now trying to get the Powell back out. But,
okay, so that stayed, and now it's just whatever you feel is the right practices to provide a good quality green surface.
Good quality surface.
Whatever whatever the percentage of power is, and you bent, like you say, you put some new bent seed in to help the 007 to help thicken up and dense.
Try and thicken up and
get the density of the bent back up.
Yeah. Because I remember years ago, Lee Yanner, I think I was talking to him on a bus from the Melbourne airport.
Moona, was that where he was working?
National.
The National.
National.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was telling him about it one day after a conference. We were on the same bus going to the car park, and he says, what you need to do is, and a lot of people don't do it, is oversow more. People don't oversow. They plant it and that's it.
That's true.
I was thinking, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In the paddock, so you've got bent grass, it reseeds itself. And,
it does. Yep, you let it go to seed. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So ever since then, I've oversown all our greens every few years. So just to get that density and try and help choke the power out a little bit more. So.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And you're happy with where you're getting them at now, the greens?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. We got a bit more renovation equipment now, so we can do a bit more to them. Scarify them, coring them, 30 drain them, all that sort of stuff. Air 2 G2 we've just started using now, so
yep.
We roll more, cut more. We've only got 8 staff here, including myself, so we don't manicure as much. We just try and maintain. So, but they've come up really well this year. They've come up really well.
Yeah,
so.
Nice. Mate, I want to ask you a question, and it's only sort of jumped in my head since you were talking about how the whole golf course was sand-capped.
Yep.
How does that perform with your drainage of the profile, the sand portion of that profile? Because how thick was the sand capping? Was it variable? Was it pretty close to X amount depth, or 200, 300 mil? What do you have?
I think it was originally supposed to be 300. 200 to 300,
yep.
But there's some areas that's probably deeper than that. But drainage wise, it was great until we sprayed out the fine fescue, and left that dense matter.
Yep.
So that slowed things down. Drainage wise, we've done a lot of drainage. We've probably put in 15 kilometres of drainage since we've been here.
Wow.
And the reason why is because when the developer put it in, they dig it in with a trencher. They'd leave the spoil on the edge of the trenches, and they'd come along, put the rock in, which the spoil would go in with the rock, and then they'd be driving dump trucks over it. So virtually sealed up,
crushing it, and
crushing it and all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of that, and even in our bunkers, they put it in with a dip switch, and so they went along the base, and then they come out of the bunker and down to a pit.
Yep.
So when they've come out of the bunker, the pipe actually comes out.
Goes uphill.
Uphill. So some of the bunkers we reconstructed.
Why did I know you were going to say that? Because as you drive out with a ditch witch, it just
that's
God.
Right. Yeah.
Far
so
out.
some of the outlet pipes are up to 5. The ones we've come across are up to 500 mil above the base of the bunker. So we may as well be just putting them goldfish in them, because they just don't drain that well.
That's like a first year apprentice job. And it's driving the ditch witch, and it just follows the contours. And if it's uphill, it's uphill. If it's downhill, it's downhill.
So there was a lot of drainage issues, but. We like I said, we started off getting a contractor in, but that was costing us over $1,000 a day to drain all these wet areas, and then we bought his excavator off him and did it ourselves.
Yeah, right.
So we've done a lot of drainage.
Yeah, okay.
And there's still some more to be done, but it's a lot better. We had some fairways, the water would be sitting on top. You'd walk down it in the winter time and it'd just squish out under your feet everywhere and be black.
Wow. Yeah, right.
So,
something that you wouldn't expect with a sand cap surface, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And a lot of the members, I think when they get a new course, they think it should be like Royal Melbourne.
yeah, straight away from the get-go. And they forget the Royal
exactly.
Melbourne's how old? I mean, that's why.
Yeah, that's right.
It takes a lot of work to keep tweaking.
So there was a lot of criticism, about the condition of the course, and we copped a lot of it because, well, we didn't build it, but we were fixing it, and even the bunkers, they'd get really wet and the faces would wash down and contaminate the sand.
Yep.
They'd hold water, and there's a lot of issues
There's
going on. Even
the
rough.
There's a lot of learning in a new site because you got to learn. It's like anything. You got to grow it in. You got to manage it. Learn what areas need more maintenance, more help than other areas, and it's a whole new baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the rough, to get cover in the rough, even though they planted it with fine fescue, they put annual ryegrass in, and it just took off, and the seed head was, it was up around your shoulders in some places.
I can just imagine annual ryegrass. Wow.
Yeah, and the seed would blow into the bunkers, and then you'd have grass in your bunkers, and it was an absolute nightmare, I think they were told that the seed was sterile so it wouldn't regenerate. Well, that was a bit of crap. But anyway.
No, I've heard the same things before. We actually, just thinking about that, when our course at Katoomba was being done by contractors, they did a similar thing with an annual ryegrass was part of it with a couple of other grasses, and they seeded over the construction tracks, the roadways. And that seed head is not... It just comes up in a heartbeat. It grows so fast, and then it goes everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. And when the rough took off, it took off. And the idea was that we were never to cut rough, which kind of raised my eyebrows. But anyway, so when we got out there, we didn't cut rough. We just cut the first, 3 or 4 runs.
Couple of laps,
off the fairway. And we had a really good wet spring, and the fescue just took off, and it was up to your hips, and the seed head, and admittedly, when the seed head flowered, it was a purple type of, and you'd stand on the highest point of the course, and you'd see the wind blowing through all this fescue, and it looked magnificent.
It would have looked unreal.
But the members obviously weren't too happy about it because, when you cut greens on the Saturday morning, you'd be standing at the shed and you could hear them just screaming their lungs off, swearing their heads
losing
off.
Balls everywhere.
Yeah. So so we ended up, we had to cut it a week before tournament. So that was a hard gig, that one. So.
Yeah, wow. Mate, a lot of learning, a lot of tweaking the golf course as it's maturing. You work out what works between yourself and the club, the board and the committee. What works, what doesn't work, what does the club like, what do you like? These are all tweaks along the way, right?
That's right, yeah.
And you get to a point now, you're probably nearly 20 years on from that time, and you're probably, I gather, everything's starting to get right now? Pretty good?
Yeah, look, it's settled down really well. I mean, it's a great course, don't get me wrong. It's, all like you said, all developments have faults, but it's a great course, it's a great layout. And Thomson Perrett are still involved. Every time there's something that needs tweaking, like we've had to shift tees because they were hitting them into the housing next door and that sort of stuff. So we had to realign them a bit. So they're always involved that way. We did a master plan to improve the course, landscaping and all that sort of stuff, which we did stage 1, and then it went dormant for 4 or 5 years, and now we've started it up again because there's just different boards that have different ideas. They don't want to spend the money on it and that sort of thing. But, so we're still keeping it as true to Thomson Perrett's design as possible.
That's good. Yeah.
Which is good, and it's good that they keep them involved, and get the tick of approval before anything's changed. So,
and it retains the integrity and their initial vision, and then the the tweaked vision as
Yep.
as the course matures, the design matures a little bit around along the way. And I've had conversations with architects, and these things are always adjusted to continuously improve golf courses to make them better as they get older and more mature. So that's a great thing that the club is doing, and that's
Yeah.
what's going to continue to have Ballarat as a standout golf course that people will want to go and play.
That's right. Yeah, and I think they put it in the rules of the club that there'd be no changes unless approved by Thomson Perrett.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So I don't know how long that lasts for when that runs out, but
Yeah.
we'll,
But
we'll see. But
for the time being,
it's good. So,
very impressive, mate. Very good to hear. Mate, can you, with that in mind, and the golf course that you've got now, and it's matured well, everyone's starting to now settle and be happy with what you've got there as a golf course, as a fantastic, good, new, modern-day golf course. Is there a part of the golf course, a feature of the course, and I like to ask this question, that you know that maybe golfers don't know? What's a real standout feature that you like about the golf course, or a place that you like to go and see? Is there one?
I like standing on the dam bank, which you could see a majority of the course,
Okay.
Down towards the clubhouse and that sort of thing. And if you stand there, sunrise or even sunset, and watch the undulations in the fairway move,
The shadows casting.
It's quite unique, and you think, people will probably never see this, but it's getting a little bit hard now because the trees are getting up a bit higher. But it's a beautiful course. It's, in my eyes anyway, it's a beautiful course, and the undulations make it. And there's some old pine trees, that were originally here, and they've survived the construction and that sort of thing. And so, it's probably the dam bank that's, you stand up there and just take it all in sometimes.
Yeah,
it's
nice.
Good. Yeah.
It's and like I think I said at the beginning, I know that Ballarat's a well-known course for people when they say if you're going to go outside Melbourne, you've got to go and play Ballarat. It's got such a great name. I probably didn't realise it's as modern, if that's the right way of saying it, as it is. I thought it was probably a bit older, but like I said, and I'm in New South Wales, and I know people talk about it, which is great to hear. Mate, tell us a little bit about your team. You mentioned there you got, I think, 8 staff. How does that go? Is it something that you've built up to that, or you've had that many for a while, or where's it going? What have you got? Tell us.
It's been up and down. Originally we had 8, and then we dropped back to 5, and then there was 3.
Wow, that would have been hard work.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was extremely long hours those times. We had a few leave here to go to the council because obviously more money and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So we got at the moment there's 8 of us all up. I've got 3 apprentices. 2 are doing their 3rd year. One guy's pretty much finished.
That's
there's great. Three of us are qualified, obviously. And I've got a labourer and a guy that just does 3 days a week. So all good crew, get along very well. They do a really good job.
How have you found getting young people involved? You mentioned that you got 3 apprentices, and it sounds like you've got a fantastic team that you're very happy with, and that are obviously energetic to keep working and doing what needs to be done on course. But what's it like getting young people? And I mentioned you've got a small city next door of over 100,000 people. That's a good start.
It's getting harder for sure. The last, before COVID, it was starting. Well, COVID on was really hard, but we used to get a lot of farm kids, where they'd come off the farm and apply for a job, and they were really good because they knew how to operate machinery and sometimes fix it and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So we don't get many of them anymore.
Okay.
I don't know why, but we get a few from St. Pat's College. I've had 2 graduates of the year.
Wow.
Apprentices.
Okay.
So
that's impressive.
That was, it is a bit.
Or a lot, mate. Take it for what it is. That's very impressive.
So I had Will Koopmans in 2016. He won that. And then Tom Lyon in 2021. and those guys both come from St. Pat's College, which, you know, they do a really good job with the kids there and
wow.
maturing them up. But so Tom's down at Metro at the moment. I think he's leading hand or something like that down there.
Right.
Man. So, and he's getting a lot of experience under his belt with the reconstruction down there that they're doing, and that sort
lots
of thing.
Work.
So,
yep.
Yeah, Will's no longer in the turf industry. He's landscaping, so down Geelong way. So,
okay.
So yeah, I've had a lot of apprentices. We've always had, you know, at least two at the same time because they go to Geelong at the TAFE and they can travel together and bounce things off and that sort of thing. But apprentices are, you know, they're hard. They're getting harder to get. You know, I'm on the committee with the VGCSA. We've recently put out a video to try and attract younger kids into the industry.
Yep.
So that'll be circulated around schools and career expos and all that sort of stuff to try and, you know, entice them in.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, it's getting harder. You know, the councils are also actually struggling to get people to work for them. But you know, they offer more money and days off and everything else, and I don't have to work as hard. So people tend to go to that more than the golf club.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things. I say that one of the things that we probably really can only I won't say argue with, but fight for, you know, more people to apply for our job is that you become, once you're in, I think once you go in to get into greenkeeping and you're in, it hooks you because it's
definitely
you get attached to it. It becomes a way of life, and even, you know, that's not for everybody, but I find that that's for most. Even if people move away, they do come back at some point in their careers because it just becomes this. You just have this emotional attachment. I talk about emotional attachments. We get it with the job. I miss it every day. I still say that to everyone. I don't work in it, but I miss it every day. I absolutely loved working on a golf course, being superintendent on a golf course. It was, and I still consider myself as a super, even though I haven't been one for nearly 15 years. But it is, I just absolutely love what it does, what you get, what the enjoyment of. And you talked about it before, you know, the buzz of providing a high quality presentation of your golf course, whatever your golf course is, for, you know, a club event or for a pro-am or just for the biggest event of the club, you know, that's going on in the year. It's just a lot of fun and enjoyment. Yeah,
it is. And if the apprentices are treated right, you know, and you give them a good chance, they love it, you know. We don't sugarcoat anything here. You know, they're thrown into the job straight away. They get an induction one day, the next day they'll be working with a guy, you know, for the week to get used to the course.
Yep.
By the end of that week, you know, they could be cutting greens or something like that. So you've got to motivate them, you know, the apprentices, the young guys. You've got to motivate them to keep them interested a little bit. You know, put them on machinery, you know. And a lot of these guys, you know, they're straight out of school, so they don't know what the workplace is about. And if they have a bad experience, they're not going to come back.
No, and that can really, because there are lots of other high-paying jobs, as nearly everywhere, right?
Yeah,
is a better-paying job. So it's not hard to, I suppose, soul-destroy someone's viewpoint of greenkeeping. It can be done pretty quickly, and then they're never going to come back. Or they might be the right person, but they get, you know, I suppose, pushed out or a bad taste in their mouth and they go somewhere else. And we can't really afford that. I don't
That's
think.
right. Yeah. And they're not going to learn either. If they're not interested in the job, they're not going to be, you know, learning at school and doing what they want to do. I mean, when Will Koopmans won the Graduate of the Year, we had another apprentice, Keegan Mead, and they'd go to school together. And when Will went to the States, Keegan thought he wouldn't mind doing the Ohio program.
Okay.
And I said, well, why not? You know, what do you got to lose?
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to do is try and talk them out of it and keep them at your club, because they're not going to, you know, they're not going to learn anything good. So Keegan went over there and he got onto the Congressional Golf Course.
Oh, wow.
Country Club, whatever it's called.
Yep.
So he was stationed there pretty much. He did a stint at TPC Scottsdale.
Wow.
And they both ended up Will ended up at Liberty National, and they were getting ready for the President's Cup.
Wow,
And Keegan ended up joining that team for a couple of weeks and prepping over the President's Cup back then. So we had two Ballarat guys in the States on the same course. So
that's a pretty good feeling, mate.
Yeah, it is. And when Keegan come back, he got a job at the National, and then he got 2IC at Sandhurst. Then went to, I think, St Andrews.
Yeah, right.
And then he's up at Darwin putting in irrigation for a course up there for Turnpoint. And now he's at Kangaroo Island doing the irrigation there on the new course. So, and he's loving it, So.
I think I've been speaking to him. I was talking to him a little bit on socials when he was at Darwin. There you go. Yeah, when he was doing the irrigation stuff up there. So
he's one of the biggest successes, I think, him and Tom. So
no, that's brilliant. And this career could take you places. There's no two ways about it.
Absolutely, yeah. They've got more opportunities now than when I started, because there was no, you couldn't go overseas because the club wouldn't fund you, but there wasn't the opportunities to do those sort of things. When I started out, it would be nice to go over and do a few courses and tournaments and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And hey, you're still a Ballarat, mate.
Still
Case in point.
I do. I go to Melbourne occasionally. I get out of Ballarat. So.
But you haven't been to Adelaide yet. You've got to get to Royal Adelaide. Very good, mate. We get back to the course a little bit. I'm probably just looking to see some. Like we've touched on how cold it gets. It gets very cold there. Regional Victoria, clear skies at night. I went to Cobram Barooga not so long ago, and I forgot what it's like out on those sort of the country in the interior of Australia, where you really do, once you get clear skies and everything's still. And I was there in January, and I think it got down to 11 or 10 degrees in January at night. Mate, tell us a little bit about some of the weather differences and the challenges that you get from the extremes of summer and winter to look after a golf course there at Ballarat.
Summers can be extreme. We've had it up to 40, 42, in Ballarat, which is, pretty hot for this sort of area.
Yeah.
And you can get, continual days of, 38, 39, 40, and the course holds up okay as long as you keep pumping the water on and that sort of thing. The fescue roughs and that brown, they go off. Sometimes I'll go back to virtually dirt by the end of summer. They bounce back pretty well once the autumn rains start coming.
Yep.
So, but the cooch loves it, which is good. You can do anything to the cooch and it'll kick back in. And, I've had some interesting, you can't kill cooch, can you? So I haven't yet. I've come close, but
you can really push it.
That's right.
It's one thing I think I enjoy doing is playing with Santarana cooch, which I try to conserve, but it's learning what a grass can do, and I think you often find that we put these limits on what we think it can do. I was chatting with someone the other day, even just about Powell. Craig, the superintendent at Duntry League here in Orange, in central western New South Wales, and we were chatting about Powell and the greens, and I've spoken with others about Santarana cooch. I mean, we put this limitation on until you actively go out there and try to find the absolute limit. I think we limit the grass more than it's actually capable of being pushed to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I mean, we're a bit scared to let it go too far. But,
we get into trouble if we do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, especially when the ground starts cracking open. But yeah, so the summers are pretty, they can get pretty hot. And the club or, the managers say, start early and finish at, 1 o'clock or something, to avoid the heat. But you need to be here when the heat's on, because you start getting brown patches and everything, dry patches and all that. You need to be here to get onto it pretty quick, otherwise it's going to get out of control.
It can turn on a dime, can't it?
That's right. Winter time's is a little bit different.
You don't like the winter, I'm guessing, so much?
Yeah, no. It's a bit hard to get out of bed.
But you've been there for a while, mate. Are you used to it? What's going on?
Well, as I keep telling people, once your body goes numb, you don't feel it. So, we've had frosts here at -5, down to -5.
Wow.
So Terry Vogel's up there; he's got nothing to worry about. But I've seen the greens iced over. When you walk on them in the morning, they're actually spider webbing under your feet.
Right.
There's that layer of frost. And of course, the manager will be screaming, put the water on to disperse the frost. But all it's doing is adding to the next layer.
Yeah, refreezes over the top.
As soon as it hits the ground, it's frozen. So that's really the extreme. And that usually happens around conference time for some reason. But when I'm in Queensland or wherever the conference is,
trying to stay warm.
Yeah.
Jeff said, "I'm going to the conference. Where is it? In Cairns. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm in."
Boys will send a photo of the frost, and I'll send one of the clear skies and sun.
Walking around in shorts and a t-shirt in the middle of June.
Yeah, but and look at our winter days. We get a lot of rain, but we get a lot of misty rain for days on end, sometimes weeks on end. It just won't stop, and that makes the course wetter than the actual downpours.
Yeah.
So it's always wet, misty.
See, I didn't pick that.
A lot of disease.
I didn't pick that. That's what the Blue Mountains is like. We used to get offshore breezing and push where it's overcast in Sydney. We're in the cloud, but it sounds like you being elevated enough is kind of what you have as well. So are you near the Grampians, kind of?
Oh, about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Grampians. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Right. Yep.
You got the big dividing range that goes up through Maryborough and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just because we're high up in the above the sea level, I guess. Because
you're just in the cloud.
It'll be pouring rain here. And cloudy and cold. And Nico Douglas will put a photo on his Instagram where it's clear skies and sunny and saying, what a beautiful day. It's like, where are you?
He loves talking it up down there at Cranbourne. He gets some unbelievable time.
Yeah, that's right. So they can be, hard to manage the course in the winter time, and the cooch goes virtually white, dormant, it's just, and it goes very flat too. It just collapses, and some of the members have trouble hitting off the deck, but it is what it is. Well, disease-wise, we get a bit of it. We try and manage it the best we can and try and, do more aeration and,
Well, there's an interesting question, because in the story that you've discussed about so far, and I go to your greens, you talked about the G2 and then the 007 and the club wanting to reintroduce or allow Powell to get involved in your surface.
Yep.
Right. I'm curious. It sounds like you got a rather similar winter climate to what we have a little bit in the Blue Mountains, or early spring for us. And with the misty days, that's low, very low light, often days on end of leaf wetness, continued leaf wetness.
Yep.
When you were allowing the power to get back into your green surface and you got more of a percentage of power, did you find that there was any increase at all in the leaf diseases, for example? Because I know we were 90% power to in our green surface, and when we got weather like that, it would just fusarium and things like that, even dollar spot in the warmer time, would just go berserk.
Yep.
And that would always hit the winter grass, the power, and not the bent at all. But that's what we dealt with. Did you find that started to increase as your power population and percentage increased in the greens at all?
Yes, absolutely. We're getting, a lot of fusarium, as you say. In the summertime, you anthracnose. Copper.
Yeah.
Wouldn't touch the bent, but the copper.
Yeah.
Here a couple of years ago, we had issues where the greens were going yellow, and I was concerned. I thought it might have been the salt out of the bore that was affecting them, and it was more the power patches.
Okay.
So I got Bruce McPhee up to have a look at them. He took samples of the power patches. He took plugs out of them, and he found that, which he said was unusual, but the nematodes are actually attacking the power. And there was nothing in the bent areas.
That's
so
odd.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, so that was unusual. But Yeah, a lot of disease, and also bumpier greens. Because the power's kicking in. It's
Yeah,
loving the winter
especially
time, and
if you've got G2 in there, it's not growing. You're getting a tufty power.
yeah,
It's rather
yeah,
hard to keep it a smoother surface, and you're going to get a little bit of bumpiness out of that. That
that's
becomes
right.
another challenge again.
Yeah,
In doing that, it's obviously probably different if you're 100% power, because then you don't have some of that other
that's
stuff
right.
to go. But that's the blended surface that you're talking about.
Yep.
Interesting challenges, mate. I didn't realise that you got that type of climate through winter time, or that type of weather patterns that just reminded me of home. That's all.
Yeah, it can get pretty depressing. And when the ducks start waddling into the door of the shed, you know that Armageddon's coming. But we get a lot of wind too. Spraying's a bit of a challenge sometimes. It just howls through here from the north, and every time you want to spray, it's a good day. But every time it's a good day, you get golfers everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, so between the misty days and the coldness, it can get down to 4 or 5 degrees. Some days in the winter time.
Yeah. Right.
So it's
much.
pretty chilly, and it's hard to get the boys out of the smoker room when you got the heaters up to 30 degrees. But credit to them, they know the job, they do it. So, but a lot of machinery maintenance goes on too in those sort of days. But,
Yeah. Exactly.
it's definitely challenging, for the maintenance side of things. So
Indeed, mate. As we look forward to the future, Jeff, what's on the horizons for Ballarat Golf Club?
I think that we're going to be poking away at more landscape areas, trying to get a bit more vegetation in around the place, against some of the members discussed. Because originally it was supposed to be a parkland type feel.
Okay, that's interesting for a Thomson Perrett design. I would have said.
I think that I think it was more the committee at the time. That's what they wanted.
Okay.
But,
Yep.
The landscape was done by the developer. It wasn't done by Thomson Perrett.
Okay.
I had a discussion one day at a conference with Ross Perrett, and he was banging on about, you need more trees here and more trees there. And I said, well, why weren't they planted during construction? And he said, well, we weren't allowed to do the landscaping. Developer done that. So they planted a lot of plants, don't get me wrong, but not to what Thomson Perrett would have done, I suppose.
Yeah, okay.
And the hardest part, all the landscape, all the gum trees and that around the borders and everywhere else, that's where they put the irrigation main lines and then put gum trees on top of it. So that's going to be interesting down the track.
Always good when you're thinking about the future with tree plantings, future maintenance.
That's right.
Very good. Oh, well, mate, look, it sets you up for the plans of moving forward in the future, and the club's still working with Thomson Perrett, which is now, I think it's Perrett Webb. I should clarify that.
Yeah, I think it is.
It is
right.
Perrett Webb. Now working with that design firm still to continue to get the best out of the golf course as it continues to mature and grow and tweak along the way. Jeff, it's been fantastic to chat with you about your career, long and established career at Ballarat Golf Club, as it turns out, and obviously the giving us a wrap and an understanding, a deep understanding of the transformation of Ballarat Golf Club through the years, mate. I really appreciate you giving us that insight, and I look forward to continue. You post some fantastic photos. The photos I've seen when you do them on socials, and I know Nico points out the good days every time that's down there at Cram, but mate, I'd like to see some more of yours when you get a good day, because it looks like a fantastic space. I've not been there. It just does look sensational, and like I said, I hear lots of people who travel into Victoria playing regional golf courses, and Ballarat's always one that they talk about as being a great course to play. So, mate, I thank you.
Have to come down, mate, but not in the winter time.
Yeah, well, hey, it's just like home for me, so it's probably not that terrible apart from the drizzle.
Well, we get snow. We get snow as well some years. So
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm okay with that. I just don't do the rain. The
I
cold's
mean,
good. I just don't do the rain. If you got a fire somewhere, I love a good fireplace.
yeah, well, I remember once spring, September, the weather was really nice. We were in our t-shirts and everything. It was beautiful. And I decided, I reckon we'll start renovating fairways because I reckon they're going to pop.
Yep.
So away we went and we scarified them, we shaved them down and did everything else. And we got towards the end of it. We thought, we'll do the tee tops too. We done them. And we had 2 left the next day. And it was a beautiful morning, not a cloud in the sky. By the time we finished the tees, the black clouds are coming from the west. And by 11 o'clock that day, the joint was blanketed in snow.
I knew that's where you were going.
And it never warmed up until February. So I was a little bit ahead of myself. So that was a learning curve.
Yes, those things happen. I remember getting caught at Katoomba, and it always makes a fool of you, right? Because you sit there and you go, look, I'm ready. I'm feeling it. It's going to be, let's get into this because I'm feeling it's going to be a good start to spring. And I remember we had a big tournament on, and it was the middle of October, and the day we were doing everything right up to the day, course was looking amazing, and sure as the morning would come, and we got a cold front come through overnight, and by the time we were hitting off at, I think it was 8 o'clock for a shotgun start, the temperature had dropped down to about 3 degrees, and it was snowing. And we had 150-odd people up there from all sorts of different corners of Sydney's corporate world, and so Manly football team and all sorts of stuff, and we had snow in the middle of October, and people were looking at us like we had two heads. What was going on? Where are we? It's
there's a few photos I think on Instagram with the snow-capped fairways and everything else on it. So
unreal. It makes for an exciting part of the world. Well, Jeff, Superintendent of Ballarat Golf Club, thank you so much for joining me on John Deere Golf Keeper of the Greens, mate. It's been fantastic to chat with you, and I wish you well
Steve.
in the future of your career. And, mate, whether you'll still be at the one club or not, time will tell.
I will tell. Not a problem at all. It's been a good chat.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, how good was that yarn with Superintendent Jeff Powell at Ballarat Golf Club? Now, make sure you check out the show notes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to throw this one in early. There's going to be lots of clickables, and as you've heard from Jeff, what a great golf course Ballarat Golf Club is, and I know, and I'm sure you've heard, people who have travelled through regional Victoria and played Ballarat. So it's got great pedigree, a great background, great design team that's built this new golf course that I didn't realise was so young. But everything I've heard, people have mentioned how fantastic and enjoyable a golf course it is to play. It's in a wonderful part of Victoria, and Ballarat is a fantastic city. It's not small, right? It's a large city. Jeff has been there for so long. It was great to get that insight into so much detail, and you can only get that with someone like Jeff who's been at the one golf course for so long. It's really interesting, and I was reminiscing about the old school equipment that I remember as a kid where I grew up, but Jeff was using that on course, and the way that they used to have to think outside the box and repair machinery and do jobs on course that we consider today to be easy. They had different equipment. It wasn't specialised. Some of it was more broadacre farming equipment like the slashers, the 3-point linkage tractor-mounted slashers that you used to cut the rough with, the travelling irrigators that Jeff mentioned there is to use to water the fairways. And I got to laugh. You heard me laughing because that's what we had where I grew up as a kid. And it was great to hear someone talking about all those old things. But look, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciated Jeff's time, and hopefully you enjoyed that chat as much as I did. A great insight to a stalwart of the greenkeeping industry down there in Victoria and indeed all over the country. Jeff's been around a long time, and lots of people know who Jeff Powell is. And look, he's got a wonderful career there, and I wish him well in the future of his career as he continues to lead the team looking after the golf course there at Ballarat Golf Club. Ladies and gentlemen, lots of clickables in the show notes. Now, please like, share, and subscribe. Please write a review if you wouldn't mind, or a star rating, but I would love a review. Written reviews are the best way that the algorithms will get the podcast out to like-minded people who enjoy listening to golf podcasts like this. So, ladies and gentlemen, that makes a difference. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do a review, and make sure you've subscribed. Now, I will tell you that I am imminently about to, and if you, depending on your preferred podcast listening platform, but there are lots of people that listen to podcasts on YouTube. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that I am just about to have the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast added to the YouTube platform. So if you watch a lot of your programs and all sorts of different videos on YouTube and you like to do it all in one place, I will be there soon, so I'll let you know when it's officially up, but keep an eye on my socials. You'll be able to see there when it's all officially uploaded into YouTube, and it will be another platform added to the repertoire of where you can find and listen to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to John Deere Golf, who partner with the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast with myself to be able to bring to you more episodes of Keeper of the Greens. They're a fantastic partner to have, and I'm very proud to have them involved and continue with their support as we travel the country and sometimes the world, talking to different greenkeepers about their careers and the golf courses that they work on. So check out deere.com.au, that's D-E-E-R-E. Check out the machinery that's available for you to help you look after your golf course better and maintain those surfaces better again. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you hit up your reps at deere.com.au, find out who they are and get chatting with them about the machinery that's available in the marketplace through John Deere Golf. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with it one more time. You hit 'em clean, we'll keep 'em green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.